Now it's time to put this servo motor together. But before I do that, people are probably curious of my sewing experience with sewing machines or whatever. So this is my primary machine I use. This is my Singer 211. Then over here I have a 4420. It's a double needle sewing machine. Then back in that back wall over there is my Foss 463. That's what I use for all my light materials if I'm going to make shirts, whatever. And then over here on my main sewing table I have a Consew 205. And I use this primarily for when I make backpacks and stuff. This is my binding machine. And then in this corner I have my sewing arm machine. That's that 1341. Okay, so then I got a few others. Here's an old Singer 211. That's a double sewing machine. That's still a work in progress. It needs to be updated and rebuilt. And then back here I have my smaller Singer sewing machines that's also industrial. These are high speeds. One's a zigzag. There's my zigzag machine, and then there's my walking foot machine right there. Okay. So let me get this on a stand, put this on a stand, and we'll assemble this machine, or this servo motor. Okay, here's what you get out of the box. I'm not going to take time to pull everything out of the box. But you'll get hardware for your motor. This is your tabletop hardware. Naturally, you get your linkage from your motor to your foot pedal. Cover. This is your controller. Motor controller. This is your servo motor controller right here. This is where your pedal hooks up to, and the motor itself. And you also get instruction sheets, okay, on how to put the thing together, but it's unclear on how you do this if you look at the pictures, okay. Then on the other side of this paper is your instructions on how to program this controller. But the instructions are also on the controller here in the back on this back sticker. But it's also written in Chinese converted to English, which is not very well translated, but it's good enough to where you can understand it. Okay, so that's what you get in the box. So let's go ahead, and before you put this on your table, this controller mounted on the table, you have to mount the motor to this before you put it up there, because because as the machines you've seen, I have about 2 or 3 machines that have these motors on there already. And it's a lot easier to put the motor together, put these 2 items together before you hang it, because otherwise you got to be doing everything over the top of your head. So without any more wasting of your time, let's start getting into this. Okay, our first step is to prep this motor for installation. The first thing we're going to have to do is to remove this pulley. So we could either remove this guard. If you're not going to use this guard, which I don't, first thing I do is take these off and throw them away, because I never use them. But if you want to reuse it, if you want to use them, you're still going to have to take the pulley off. And they're not really on there all that tight. I loosened mine a little bit before I filmed this, but all the ones that I ever received, they're not on there all that tight. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove this nut, okay? Put that over here. Then you're going to remove a pretty hefty, defty lock washer. Put that over here. Then you're also going to have a star washer. So you want to remove that, okay? And then you want to remove your pulley. Now, if you're going to change it to a 45 millimeter pulley, this is the time to do it. Then you just pull this out, okay? Put your pulley to the side here. Now you got 3 screws that you need to loosen. If you want to keep your guard on, you're going to have to loosen these up, because this will get in the way of the installation. So you just take your screws and do that, okay? And then, oops, there's 4 screws. There we go. Then this will swivel. Because you need this to get out of the way of your boat here, okay? So this needs to turn. If you're gonna use this guard, you don't need to take this off at this time, and then you don't need to install your pulley. But me, since I don't use these, because to me they just get in the way and they cause more problems than what they're worth. Now if you have kids and if you have pets that like to play around with you when you're sewing, then you need to put the guard on, okay? But I don't have any kids. I got 2 cats, and they don't come around here when I'm sewing. So I'm just going to take this cover and take it off. And it goes in the trash, okay? I just got more screws for my collection. Also, you're going to have a keyway right here, okay? This comes out, but if it didn't come out, don't mess with it. Then you also have a washer down here. So if you took your pulley apart and everything fell apart and this washer comes off, when you were going to reinstall it, make sure you put this thick washer at the base of where your bearing goes, okay? Then put your keyway in. Then put your pulley in. And when you put your pulley in, if you forget how you take it off, you see where it says 75 millimeter? That goes on the outside. And also you're going to have a little bit of a shaft. That shaft goes towards the motor. So you put it on just like so. 75 millimeter showing on the outside. Keyway in there. And then you put the star washer on next, because we're doing everything in reverse order now. Okay. Okay, star washer. Then the lock washer. It doesn't matter which way your star washer goes. Your lock washer. And then your nut. And since, like I say, since I'm not going to use that guard, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this all down. If you're using a guard, this is the last step you're doing before you, because you're going to, after you put mount your pulley, by the time you mount your motor onto your table, then you can see where this guard goes. Once that happens, then you got to put your pulley while it's on the table. And if you went to that extreme, naturally everything came off. Your keyway, your washer, your lock washer. So if you're keeping your guard, revert to this very first section, how to put it all back together again. Now that we got the motor ready to be installed, what we need to do is get all of these wires and stuff out. There we go. Just let them untangle all of this, okay? So the first step we want to do now is we want to mount the motor to this controller. Let me get the screwdriver out of the way. You don't need that anymore. Okay. When we do this, the single prong here is towards the pulley, and actually these two ears back here is the back of it. Okay. So the motor is going to mount just like this. Fan towards the controller, and pulley, pulley towards the front right here, okay? So now what we're going to do, let me put all this to the side right here for now. We're going to get the bag that has the motor hardware. And that's the one let me open up this bag. Oops. And we'll dump all this out. There we go. So now you got all of this hardware here. You got the big bolt, you got the angle right here, okay, let me slide this out of the way. Then you're going to have 6 of these fender washers, okay, and 6. Then you're going to have a lock washer. You're going to have an acorn nut. You're going to have your adjustment, let's say a keyway. I don't know what you would call it. Then you got 2 nuts, a big lock washer, and washers, and a small lock washers, okay? Now, the first thing we need to do is to mount the motor to the controller. You want to take your big bolt and make sure before you do anything that it screws into this hole. All the way. Make sure there's no burrs or anything else like that on there, because you don't want to do this when you got the motor on there because it's just going to be hard to work with. See how rough that sounds? Okay. So what I'm going to do is you could take anti-seize. You could take Vaseline. Vaseline to me would be better because you're going to be using it in a household. Or anti-seize compound. So what I'm going to do, since my threads work and they're not jamming up, I'm going to go ahead and take Vaseline, or I'm actually going to take some silicone grease. And put in there. So what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do, once we lube up the threads, we're going to put in the old big lock washer, okay? Then we're going to take the motor, okay, then we're going to take the bolt, And on the, you can see we got the top and the bottom. The bottom one has the big hole on it. Naturally, this won't fit on the top one. So you take it from the front to the back with the bolt, going front and to the back, just like that. Okay. The next thing we want to do is put on these 6 big fender washers. Okay. No washer up here, just the lock washer. Just this one lock washer right there is all you need. These 6 all go on the back. And these go on the bolt just like so. Okay. See how I got that? Let me zoom in on that. Right here. You can see the 6 bolts right there. Okay. Then we're going to take our controller, and then it's going to, with the one prong, remember? And then we're going to put the motor onto it like so. Get these wires out of the way. You got to be fighting with the wires. See, can you imagine what it'd be like if you're trying to do this over your head when you have this mounted on the table and you're doing this on your back and all these washers fall on your face? Because the first time I put that together, that's what I did. So you just then you screw it in just like so. Now, when you greased it up, you're going to find out how much easier that is to screw into the controller. Okay. Why these washers? Okay. This is your adjustment arm. Okay. When you put that in here, and this other adjustment leak, okay, now this goes on the top section of your motor. See this right here, your top section? This is going to go from the back to the front, but you want this in the back. So you're going to go, oops, let me get it in the picture here. Let me zoom out. Okay, back towards the front, just like so. The reason for these lock washers, as you can see where this would line up, down here, you know, this will slide in and out just a little bit, okay? And then you fold this over like so. And see how this hole lines up right here? Okay. Without your lock washers, without these big fender washers right here, this bolt would not line up here. So that's why you need those 6 fender washers to bring your motor out so this could go here. So now what we're going to do is, before we do anything, we're going to take and run a nut. You got 2 nuts left over. Take a nut and run it down here. This is your adjustment nuts. This is how you adjust your belt tension. Okay. And you want to keep it right about there. Okay. Then you take a washer. You got 2 washers. Take one of the washers and put it on there like so. And then you raise your thing up, your motor up, and then you finagle this to get to where you might have to loosen up your big bolt so you can move this around a little bit. And this should slide over. There we go, just like that. Okay. Now you can continue raising your motor. Hold it down because it's going to flop over again. Take the other remaining washer. Then the other remaining nut, or excuse me, Then you're going to also have another lock washer. And then you're going to have a nut. Like so. Okay. Then you're going to have an acorn nut, a lock washer, and a washer left over. So you're going to take the washer, put it on the end of this bolt here, on your adjustment bolt. Take your lock washer, put that on, and then the acorn nut. And then you put that on. Uh-oh. Should have tried that, make sure it fit first. These are made in China, so the thread qualities aren't really all that superior. Then you just take you get a small adjustable wrench or anything, pliers or whatever, and you give that a turn on there and see if it's going to take. Then you just tighten this up. This is the first one I had where the threads weren't cut right on it, so I'm just recutting these threads, because once this is tight, this never needs to be taken off again. So if you're going to have a little bit of cross threaded action, it ain't going to hurt anything, because like I say, you're not going to take this off again anyway. You want it just a little bit loose. It doesn't need to be. Let's see. You want it loose enough to where you can move your motor up and down, but tight enough to where it turns when you want to adjust it. Let's see here. Let's go all the way. Let's do the full motion. Turn my nut all the way down. There we go. Like I say, this is not a very precision made system they got here. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is just keep it right about that position and run this down like so. Tighten this up just a little bit more. Okay, that play will loosen when you tighten these two up. When you tighten this up and tighten this nut up. So now what we're going to do is tighten up the bolt hand tight. So that gives us some idea. There we go. So you want it somewhat firm. Okay. So when you get it all put together, this is what it looks like. Okay. And we'll go over the pieces again. Okay. You can see the two nuts, this angle bolt going through here, the 6 washers in between the motor mount and your motor controller. And then you got this, and then you have your castellated nut. Now the adjustments for this to move your motor closer, or to move your motor left and right, to have your belt lined up, there's several things you could do. Okay, Here you have your slots that will let you move your motor forward, or left and right, to line up with your sewing machine pulley. Or what you can do is this nut right here. If you loosen up this nut, okay, on the back side, there's a nut right here on the back side right there. If you take an Allen wrench and loosen this up, okay, this will loosen the motor here. Then you could slide your motor, you could slide your whole motor on this bracket, either move it back or move it forward, ever how much more you need to do it, okay? So adjust your motor mount first. Make sure that your bolts are fully encased in your motor, your mounts right here, okay? Then if you need more adjustments, you could adjust it by loosening this Allen wrench and then slide your motor forward and aft this way to get your further adjustment. And then this black cap goes up on top like so, right there. And that's all there is to it to put this motor together. Now there's hundreds of videos on how to install this on a sewing machine. I don't need to put it on any of these right now. All of my machines have the servo motors in them. So, and then there's instructions on how to do it, on how to mount this. Okay, speaking of mounting, let's talk about the mounting hardware now. If you're replacing this servo motor right here, okay, with a clutch motor or a different servo motor, you can't use the hardware that you're currently using. Okay. And no, these are not my fabric scissors. They got P for paper. Okay. You're gonna have to use these bolts that came with this motor, because the bolts that the other servo motors use are about this much longer. And then when you put them in the table, the one of the bolts will come through and hit this, okay, and another one will come through and hit here, okay, because those bolts are just a little bit too long. So you have to use these bolts right here that come with the servo motor. Then you have what else? Okay, let's see what else you got with this. So you got the 3 bolts. You got the three rubber things, the 3 rubber shock mounts or vibrators, and when they would go right here, okay. So this part goes against the table, so it'll be like so, like just like this, against the table. And this is what it would look like. Okay, you got this, this, and this. This is what it would look like when you put them on the table. You want your table right here, and this eliminates the noise and stuff. And you can see right there where the rubber mount goes. Just like that. Okay. And that's all there is into installing that motor. And then you hook up your controller right here, you know, and you'll be using this hardware right here. These 2 screws will mount your controller. These 3 lock washers and nuts go to these 3 bolts right there. You got 3 washers that go to these bolts, and then you got your 3 rubber shock mounts right there. Then you got your miscellaneous wire keepers. Okay, so that's what you get. Your hardware for your mounts, 3 washers, 3 lock washers, 3 nuts, cable and carriage bolts, rubber shock mounts, 2 small screws for your controller, and then you get your assorted. You get 4 cable keepers to keep your tables tight against the thing. But there are several videos on how to install this motor with these controllers. There are other different type of servo motors that have these, the motor and the controller, and there's videos on them. These do it the same way. There's nothing different between those.